Okay, let's look at conveying data over distance. I'm just keeping an eye on the time, using the brain like a USB. So this is about consciousness again. This is written about in my chapter, Children of the Mind, Using a Brain Like a USB. It's a little complex. So I got my husband to draw some really simple images to try to convey to you what took place. So this was actually my son taking part in an activity on a craft, and I was observing it. So what he had to do was he had to receive information from a grey. Through consciousness, through telepathy, he had to receive a mass of information. Now, I have simplified it there to 5 different kinds of flowers to keep it really simple. But in actual fact, he received in his mind hundreds of images that were broken into sets. So if we look at mathematical concept of sets, he had a set of images with mountains, a set of images with beaches, etc. So they were all in sets, and they were all given to him in a particular order. Hundreds. He was then asked to put them into a different order using reasons or explanations from the grey. So order them in a different way. So in his mind, he had to reorder them and know the order they went into. We talk about hundreds of images here, and he was 7. Then he was asked, okay, now in using this new order, you are to convey all of those images in their new order, in their sets, to the computer. But what he was actually doing was the ET was sending images, but they were sent as frequencies. And each of those frequencies contained all the elements of an image of, say, a mountain. My son received those images as frequencies. He reordered the frequencies. He didn't have to think about every single aspect of every single image. He just received the frequency. And he then conveyed the frequency to the computer, which transposed it to the new format of the images. Now, that's all quite complex to take in. But what we're talking about is a child, and there's millions of them on the planet in his age group who've been taught these things on craft to do advanced things with consciousness, far in advance of what my age group of experiencers and abductees has done. And these are the people who, as these abilities start to come to the fore in their mature life, are going to take us into the future, because they're going to be able to relate in the future to any form of contact that takes place. They're going to be able to relate immediately to how to convey data, how to convey conversations or information, and how to relate to the ET's technology. So, as I said, transferring data as frequencies. So he gets the frequency, he reorders the frequency, he sends the frequency, and the computer puts it back into a structure that we recognize. Now, this is already being done by us. Professor Jack Gallant from Berkeley University, his laboratory has been doing mind mapping and videos of the mind, where people are put into an MRI machine. They are subjected to certain images, and they are taking photographs basically of the person's brain and where it is lighting up as different sorts of images are conveyed to them. So images that might contain mountains will light up differently to images that might contain animals. So here we are now ourselves looking at the basis of these consciousness frequencies, how they can be conveyed, and how a computer can convert them. Because now this laboratory in Berkeley is able to put the brain images through the computer, and the computer has been programmed to transform that into an image. So we're moving ever closer to using our consciousness in every aspect of our lives. Creating alternative realities or states of consciousness. I would like to be able to talk to you about the virtual reality chair, but the image that's being prepared by my husband for my second book is not completed yet. So I'm just going to give you a brief description here because it's very similar. It's called a virtual reality chair in my book because at that time we had not even invented the word augmented reality. That came along later on. But really what I was seeing on board craft at the age of 12 was augmented reality. So I witnessed an ET sitting on a particular chair with a small screen in front. That screen shone a beam of light towards his eyes, and in that beam of light, I was able to see all kinds of imagery taking place. And what sitting on this chair did was it transported his consciousness somewhere else. So he could go to another planet. He could go to any part of our planet if he wanted to. It was accompanied by smells and sounds and all kinds of other information that we take for granted every day that we use our senses for. These were conveyed to him through consciousness. So he could transport himself somewhere else at his whim. And they used this chair, which I called the virtual reality chair, as a form of entertainment and as a form of learning. Now, moving on now to reforming the physical structure. And this is also to do with consciousness. Okay, so in 1989, I had an experience which I wrote about in my book called A Glimpse of Cosmic Culture. And I was taken into a room with several other humans, into the small room that was very white and very small. The first thing that happened was the room expanded. Now, don't ask me how to explain that technology, but a lot of experiencers have seen this happen. They've seen a craft get bigger. They've seen it change shape. They've seen the interior grow massive as soon as they pass through the entry door. And in this room expanded. It expanded so far that I really almost could not see the end of it. It was very white, very glary. And as we passed through the open door into this room, it was like passing through a bubble of water is the only way I can explain it. So I knew that we were inside some kind of technology that was very closely linked to consciousness. Out of the whiteness appeared these greys and some other species, and they said that they were going to show us how they could transform matter using this combination of consciousness and technology in this white room. So while we watched, they began to basically disintegrate. So slowly the form of the entities began to take on an indistinct, smudgy appearance, and their outlines were beginning to waver and shimmer. And slowly they began to disintegrate. Now, I've used quite a bit of colour there to indicate that the different forms, giving them each a different colour, began to interrelate and just form into this mist of colour. And they then asked us, because through consciousness they could still communicate with us. So it was like hearing what I described as a thought voice from the grey who was in charge. And he was saying to us that they could form any shape that we desired. If we depicted in our mind a shape and projected it to them, they would create it. So various humans came up with different shapes that they could then create in an atomic structure in front of us. They then encouraged us to let go all our preconceived ideas about the structure of our body and see if we could let go and just fade into a mist. Well, none of us could do it. They were encouraging us and communicating with us. And it was such a profound experience that everyone, all of the humans present, were in tears. Not tears of fear or frustration or any of that. It was just fears of joy, because the environment created within this room by their disintegration and their reforming, using their form to merge and form something else, was showing to us that much of our own reality is not reality at all. And they said to us that in the future, man would be able to do this. We would be able to disintegrate our body and reform it. So I wrote in my book that we were surrounded by pure consciousness, or this intelligent light, and we had a glimpse of our own future because we were told that humans would be able to do this in the future. So this is a very far-reaching aspect of consciousness I'm talking about now. It's not about flying a craft. It's not about looking into a body to see if there are some health problems. This is about our very being, our very structure, our very world as we know it, and seeing that disintegrate and reform into something else was quite a revelation. And it was assisted, as I said, by some form of technology. Right, the last one I'm going to look at now is recalibrating a biological form to the hive mind or societal standard. So what I'm talking about here is a grey that I saw when I was 12 years old and I was taken into their private living quarters on the craft. I was shown a grey lying down on a bed, and he wasn't sleeping, but he'd put himself into some kind of altered state. And through the bed that he was lying on, which of course in itself was a piece of technology, the big brain of the craft was registering everything about him. And I can liken this to defragging a computer, where the defrag of the computer reorganizes all the files and tidies it up for you. And in effect, this was a defrag taking place on this biological form. So any anxieties that may have occurred during the day dealing with petulant humans or anything else coming on board would be smoothed away. The procedures for the next day, the outline of what he needed to do the next day would be formalized into his consciousness. Anything else, any tensions, anything else in his body that had occurred throughout that day was balanced, is the only way I can put it. So it was rejuvenating the body, mind, and spirit. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to get the next slide up. Okay, so he's lying on that bed. It's a very thin bed, but it's technology. It's connected to the computer. It is able to register just like a piece of light that slides along when you're photocopying something, and it copies that image or that writing. It's the same with this bed. He's lying on that structure. It is registering everything about him. So he is being recalibrated to balance him back to exactly the form that they want him to be, exactly the consciousness for him to have for his next day in work. And I know that this sounds really odd, but we do this ourselves. We meditate, we listen to music, we go for a walk in nature, we might go for a swim or whatever, because we know that that is balancing us back to something that we feel comfortable in, and this is their way of doing that. But once again, it combines consciousness and technology. Okay, so in 2018, we're just about finished now, I was asked to speak at the UFO Congress, and I was specifically asked to speak not so much about my experiences and the alien agenda, but about the alien technology. And as some of you already know, talking at that conference nearly cost me my life because someone did not like me talking about the alien technology. Now, why could that be? Well, we've got a number of companies and corporations and individuals now who are saying they have pieces of alien technology. They have pieces of craft, they have pieces of metal, etc., that they are studying. And we have long suspected in UFO research that downed craft have been taken and studied and maybe back engineered. We don't know that for sure, but those rumours have and speculations have been around a long time. There is a lot of money to be made from advanced technology. And so protection of that technology and that knowledge is paramount to some people who want to have control of it. So an experiencer getting up and talking about bridging technology, talking about how some scientists have been in touch with ETs, talking about how scientists have been taken on board and have been taught things that comes out in their intelligence in their day-to-day life, is just a little too threatening, because if you want ownership of something, you want to be able to say it's yours, you invented it, you have the rights to it, you have the copyright, etc., and you can charge money for it. So there's not very many experiencers talking about technology as I do. I have a lot of memories of technology. And I have a lot of memories of the talks they've had with scientists, etc., on board craft, and I have been present at some of those for a variety of reasons. And maybe one of them is because I would one day speak about my experience of their technology, to start familiarizing people with the fact that it's not scary. It would only be scary if it was put into our hands and we used it the way we use weaponry and nuclear technology. So on the last day that I was at the conference, I was threatened on the Saturday night by two guys who caught me in a corridor on my own. They wanted to know what else I knew about technology, and I was threatened. They knew aspects of my family and my family life, so that was quite confronting, but it has happened to me before. The next day in a lift, I was sprayed by a strange woman with a substance that I thought was perfume that she was spraying over her shoulder by accident. It went all over my face and my shoulders and head, and I breathed it in. And by the time I flew out of Phoenix and out of LA back to New Zealand, I was extremely ill. I was taken to hospital and they found that I had a cocktail of lung bacteria that had given me a lung infection, blood infection, and skin infection. I nearly died that night. And another researcher, Craig Lang, who was at the Congress, died Wednesday night in Phoenix Hospital of the same thing, and he was also sprayed in a lift by a strange-looking woman as I was. I have spoken to his fiancée, and she has gone public about this, as I have gone public about my experience. So this was a planned event that someone tried to do, tried to take us out, and fortunately for me, they were not successful. Unfortunately for Craig, they were. So what does this tell us? This tells us that we are moving into a very dangerous time on the planet when it comes to UFO research and UFO researchers, because we see now that the Pentagon and the US government and the CIA, etc., are becoming involved in putting information out there. And the whole field, I believe, is moving towards them becoming the major players in it. There are a lot of scientists now coming on board in the subject with a variety of groups and coming out and talking about what they know about technology and what their thoughts are. And there are other scientists who have been studying this quietly for years, some of whom are coming out with their information and some whom deem it to be too dangerous to do that still, and they're remaining quiet. So at this present time, we have a lot of confusion around this area. The world tends to look at the States for leadership in this. I don't know why, when the whole of the rest of the world has their own history of UFO sightings and contact. So the ETs said on an occasion when I was on board with 250 people being lectured to, that an unfolding process of scientific discoveries must take place first in order to lead mankind towards acceptance of these advanced concepts of energy. And that's a process of scientific discoveries is happening now, with more and more scientists coming out about what they know. And we also have the James Webb Telescope now in space, which is probably going to show us a lot of information. And this will be presented to the populace as new information or an unfolding process, when in fact much of it will probably have been stuff that they've been studying for a long time that they haven't told us about. So we need to be very circumspect about what is happening at present. A Gray, who was lecturing at this time, said he insisted the human race was not yet ready to accept this information or technology, nor responsible enough to use the information with integrity and right application. And we see that right across the board. We see that with the way we warmonger, how we use technology to harm others, how we weaponize so many things to create a situation of power and control. So they're not going to share with us how they slip consciousness into almost everything, because they don't trust how we would use that. We have a long way to go before we could reach that capacity of being trusted like that. It is up to people like me and many others like me to talk about this. But as you can see from a few slides back, that can be quite a dangerous thing to do. The Gray anticipated a time in the future when the work that has been carried out between the two species, humans and extraterrestrials, can be revealed to the public. Now, don't confuse that with the work that some other covert groups, perhaps in the States and other countries, have been doing. We're talking about work that they have been doing between selected people, many of them scientists, that they have been taking on board craft for years. And when this can be revealed to the public, but this eventual disclosure will be dependent upon mankind's readiness and receptivity. And that's the bottom line, our readiness. Are we ready? No, we're not. We can't even keep our own planet tidy. There's wars going on all over the place. Why would they trust us with technology that could take us zooming into the future, extend our lives, cure terrible diseases, make food and water available, clear up the environment? Why would they share all of that consciousness stuff with us and leave us to do what we want to do with it, not what is best for us to do with it? Our receptiveness, that is the other underlying factor there, our readiness and our receptiveness. Humanity is still not receptive to the subject, even though we have the Pentagon and other governments coming out saying, yes, this is a reality, UFOs are real. Still, a vast amount of the population is not receptive to it, either through ignorance, because they never studied the UFO phenomenon, or through religion, where they are disbelieving it is a threat to them, or through other ideas and ideologies. So the receptiveness and readiness is not yet there. Okay, I'm going to leave it at there. I've covered quite a bit of material. You're probably a bit strung out from the speed I've been going, and I apologise for that. But there we have it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suzy. I must say, and hopefully on behalf of everyone, thank you for your bravery of speaking out and getting this information out. I know there's some risk to it, and I do know that there's also some power of protection when you speak out, because then your word is out there, and if you disappear, then everyone knows what happened to you. But thank you very much for your bravery. For now, I'll mute myself again and turn the floor over to the Q&A with the audience, everyone who's here, which is 29 people now. And everyone who has a question or something to say, please click the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and there's a raise hand option. So please raise your hand. Suzy, you can go and answer questions.
Okay, so I think Michael had his hand up.
Hi, Suzy. I have read your book, and it's a good read. I'm very interested. So I have been seeing like, yeah, over the years, people getting more information like you have, and it seems like it's going to be culminating on something or other. You have very detailed information, and so my question is, what do you think is? I mean, I know kind of explained it a little bit, but in your opinion, what's the end game of what they're trying to achieve? What would be the end game? Just that's a biggie, but I don't know in general.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Well, the end game, from my perspective, is that that we will eventually be able to join a galactic family and have open contact with these other species who've been visiting us for a long time. But of course, as I've outlined in the speech, there's dangers in that for them and for us. We have to reach that level of acceptance that they even exist, because lots of people think that they don't. And not only that, many experiencers have talked about their concern, the ETs have expressed concern for our nuclear capabilities and our propensity to creating wars. Naturally, they're not going to want to come in here. Peaceful races will not want to come in under those circumstances. So we have a lot of work to do cleaning up our act first. I describe in my book how this agenda of advancing mankind is tied closely not only to science but to spirituality as well. So we're very backward at the moment on the planet in terms of spirituality, and we only need to turn our TV on at night, even though the TV isn't the be-all and end-all of what's happening in the world. It does give us a bit of a viewpoint of what's happening, and most of it isn't terribly pleasant. So they have to assist us to raise our consciousness, our awareness, and the way we view ourselves and our planet, which is a living entity, before they can risk having this kind of open contact with us. They are concerned about us going out into space, which we are doing, and taking our warlike tendencies or our weapons with us. That is one of the biggest fears that they have, is that our effect may be a very negative thing on other civilizations. Mm-hmm. Okay, going along the top line, Maureen.
First of all, Suzy, phenomenal. And I was aware of what had happened to you at that conference, and also about Craig Lang. And I'm also aware that these kinds of things have happened to a number of other experiencers, who, and I've heard very credible stories about experiencers being kidnapped and interrogated at conferences, as well as being poisoned and other things. This has become a very dangerous world for those experiencers that are out in the open. And I see there's some other folks here from the MUFON's Experiencer Research team. And I'll tell you, in the last, 4 months or so, have we gotten an education on what's going on in the world of experiencers. And believe me, it is not a pretty picture. And I think it has a lot to, there's a lot of connections with the establishment of that permanent UAP office in the Pentagon. And suddenly, I shouldn't say all things, experiencers who have had close encounters and abductions have suddenly become very people of interest, just put it as people of interest. And I believe that their lives are very much imperiled. And I also believe those people, even like those on the Experiencer Research team, to a certain extent, we become vulnerable because we talk to all these people who tell us about their experiences that are now very, how would you say, hotly in demand by certain people within, whether it's the deep state, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, the last 4 months has been quite an education for all of us who are on the Experiencer research team. And believe me, you don't even want to go there. So that's it for now. But thank you, Suzy. Phenomenal.
Thank you, Maureen. Yes, I agree with you that it's quite dangerous out there at the moment. And in fact, experiencers coming to me to talk about their experiences, some of them are wanting to go public. There's 2 in New Zealand that I'm talking to at the moment who have very extensive memories and some very good and important information, relevant information. And they were going to write books and put it out there. And I have urged them to reconsider that, just at the moment at least. The time may come for that, but now is not the time. Now is the time for experiencers to talk to other experiencers or trusted researchers, and just keep your head down a little, because I think it's going to get worse out there before it gets better. The ETs did show us on one occasion when I was with a group of people in a room, they showed us futuristic images of people who alleged to have had contact with ETs being chased, having things thrown at them, having their lives turned upside down. That hasn't happened yet. I hope we don't reach that stage, but we could do. And they said that a lot of people would jump on the bandwagon and maybe even fabricate things to gain notoriety, but they would quickly disappear back into the woodwork if this kind of situation arose. And only those with a strong commitment to their lifelong experiences would continue holding the baton, put it that way. So I think we're in for a rough ride. I know that Luis Elizondo, when he was asked, what about contact, he said, don't go there. Believe me, don't go there. So these guys who are out there fronting the whole scene at the moment, they know a lot more than they're letting on. And I don't think we should be taking everything they say at face value. I think we should be using our own critical thinking and being very cautious and protecting information and people. Someone Zero State Reflex. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, my name's David. I'll have to change that so it doesn't look weird. Thanks for the talk today. It was really fascinating. One of my questions is, how have the aliens solved their propensity for violence? It seems like one of the big contexts of us being able to use this type of technology is that, or it won't be shared until humans learn how to not, let's say, use it in that way. And it seems, obviously now with what's happening in the world, I feel like the possibility for us not to use the technology in a violent manner is probably thousands of years from now. So I'm wondering, have they said how they have solved it, or are they just such a different type of civilization or being that it's not built into their DNA? And I just wonder if you have any thoughts on that. Thank you.
I think it's a little bit of all of that you've said there. People talk about the Greys. They seem to be the front people, as I've stated many times, but there are a lot of other species behind them that I've seen on craft and identified. And all of these species have obviously either faced huge difficulties as we have and had to overcome them, or, as you pointed out, were just never like that in the first place. We look at the balance of the scales. We always say, in order to recognize, goodness, we must also understand badness, as a simple way of putting it. But what if there are species where there is no badness? Yes, I agree. It could take us time to move towards this peaceful state in our consciousness, but we don't have time. And that's why in my book I outline the agenda that involves millions and millions of people on this planet, whether they have memory of it or not. They are involved in it. And it's about fast tracking us along a certain track to a point where we may be more manageable, is the best way that I could put it. That doesn't mean to say that we're perfect and pure as driven snow by then, but we may be manageable. We may have had certain realizations. And I don't usually like to say this because it is quite negative, and I don't want to frighten people, but I have been shown on screen massive earth changes and massive severe weather events that with many lives lost and changing the face of our continents. So it may be that such a traumatic event occurs and we start civilization again, and that's where they come in and assist us. And maybe that through suffering these tragic events, to what extent I don't know, but through suffering those tragic events, we may do a massive turnaround. They have said that the more people who come on board on a planet with building their spirituality, raising their consciousness in terms of the environment and how we treat each other, will help to minimize the effects of these tragic events on the planet. And that, in our minds on the craft at that time, signaled to us that we are there's all these different bits of consciousness, and we are part of the planet's consciousness. Whether we think that we're the rulers on the surface of it or not is irrelevant. The planet is the main consciousness. We are simply on its back. And until we start complying and conforming to that natural consciousness, we will continue to suffer. The more we understand this, we might suffer less, which means that the consciousness will react to us. It will love us, if I want to put it that way. It will embrace us. And a lot of people who've talked about this for years have been called tree huggers, but they're right. They are right. The ETs say that all the time. Okay, John. Hi, John.
Suzy, good to talk to you again. There was a lady that was ahead of me, Kristen Sullivan. I think she got tired of having her hand up. Somehow you didn't notice her. I think she deserves to go first, and perhaps you can come back to me afterwards.
Is Kristen on the next page?
I'm here. You answered some of my questions, and I'm going back and forth. It just feels like there's always going to be people that are in power that greed and power is the problem. And how are we ever going to get out of that? Because I don't see that going away unless we hit rock bottom. And is there something they're doing now, or that they've told you that they're trying to do now to help us move more quickly in that direction without having to go to the extreme that we're headed?
Definitely, Kristen. If you look at the agenda in my book and the three waves, the third wave of people who are like my son's age, they're the ones who are going to come to the fore, and is starting to come to the fore now. I was told decades ago that I would be one of the experiencers on the planet who would take the third wavers under my wing that are coming forward and help them assimilate into their role. And my goodness me, I'm so busy at the moment with people in their 30s and early 40s coming to me saying, look, I've just had this boom of information and all these memories. I don't know what to do with it. Am I going insane? And I immediately recognize them as third wavers who are coming into memory of their experiences, having to very quickly accept what's happened to them and having to recalibrate their lives. Moving, changing jobs, all kinds of things happening in their lives, getting them prepared and in the position they need to be in, because they are going to lead us into this future. They're going to be the decision makers and the people who get into professions and in positions of seniority in their 40s, etc. And they're going to be the ones who move these other people, the bullies and the power trippers, on. And take their place. So yes, they've been working on this for decades, for years. The ETs have been working on this agenda and working with people being born onto the planet into this agenda.
Now, for the people that are already here, couldn't they be, you spoke on downloads, couldn't they be getting a whole lot of people that are already, I don't want to say good or bad people, but that are open to this and could help if you downloaded to a bunch of people at the same time? Does that go against something?
Well, they've already done that to a great extent. In my book, it's chapter Thought Seeds and Soul Lights, I think, is one of the final chapters of the book, where I write about them taking hundreds of thousands of people on craft. We're talking about massive organizational stuff here, let alone anything else. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people on craft. And I've been there, I've lectured to groups of 250 people where they wanted a human in front of these people who are in an altered state, who have agreed at a soul level. They're not part of the program that, like I am, but they are aligned beside it. And they're taking these people on. They've been asked at a soul level that, look, the planet's in a space of hell. Do you want to help? This is what you can do. Yes, their soul says, yes, I will do that. And so they are given instruction. They have had massive amounts of information, what I call a thought seed, put it into their head, and at particular times it will be triggered when they need to start realizing what they need to do. So it may be to solve problems in their community. It may be in their work sphere. It could be in all different politically or whatever. Scientists, people right across the board, down to village elders in small remote islands. This is all about survival, all about the human race, as many as possible moving forward together. So they're already doing that. But there is a measure of the free will in there, and that's why they go to the soul state. They address the soul, and the soul makes a decision, and it filters through to the person that you now are, and your body contains that soul.
Thank you very much.